Hi, everyone. Michael Rosen from NorthStar Advisory Group. Today is October 1st, and it's Estate Planning Awareness Month. Today, we have a special guest with us, Susan Kamenitz, who comes to us working with many of NorthStar's clients. Susan, why don't you kick it off with a little bit of background about yourself?
Hi, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. So my name is Susan Kamenitz. I have been a practicing attorney for over 30 years. I practice in Pennsylvania and New Jersey primarily. And my practice pretty much runs the gamut of the estate planning spectrum. I handle estate planning, I handle estate administration. I'm lucky enough to do a lot of estate litigation, which hopefully our planning avoids in the end. And I do a fair amount of guardianships, special needs planning, and elder law planning. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much my history.
Thank you for that background, Susan. So if we have a client and they're interested in estate planning, what would be the first step that you think that they should start with?
The first step that most people need to take when they're thinking about an estate plan is they need to gather information. One, they need to gather information about their assets, their liabilities, what and how they are held, and also think about what it is that they want to happen with their assets. First, during lifetime, and second, after something should happen and they pass away. There's also additional considerations is what happens if someone gets sick. So the idea of finding out what you have and organizing it or trying to organize it, because it's not always easy, and getting that information together, thinking about what your goals are, and then most likely the idea is you call an estate planning attorney. And I say an estate planning attorney, not just your regular attorney. And the reason why is not all attorneys understand estate planning and the intricacies and the nuances that go along with actually putting together an estate plan.
And to that point, what do you think are the most common mistakes that you see people basically make within setting up an estate plan?
Well, I think number one, people don't follow through. So people are afraid to get their information together. They're afraid to put it down. They're afraid to think about their demise. And that is probably the biggest problem that I see is people who are not properly planning, who avoid it. They start it and then they don't. And then you're left with the state figuring out where your assets are going to go, or it can create problems down the line for your loved ones. Maybe it causes additional issues with your children. If you have minor children, if you have children with special needs, if you have people that you're worried about Medicaid planning, all of those issues are really important. And so the common mistakes are where people don't actually put it pen to paper, and they don't think about it thoroughly. So it's one thing to put your information down in a will, a trust, but you need to make sure that you're considering everything.
So to that point, when should someone consider just doing a will versus we hear a lot of people talk about trust. When does a trust really kind of enter the picture for the average family?
Well, a trust can be a very effective tool, and it's most effective, I would say, for people, number one, who have children and young children, because if something should happen to you and your children would be entitled just under a will, perhaps, unless you've set forth specific timing for that, they might get your assets at 18 years of age. And if you've got a considerable amount of assets, then that can cause a problem. Again, as I mentioned before, when you're dealing with special needs planning, if you have a child that is receiving government benefits and things are just left in a will, then you might actually cause more damage by making them ineligible for their benefits. So while many people might be scared of a trust or think that it's a very complex tool, sometimes it is, but other times it's not. It's actually, like I said, it's very effective to help people control and provide their wishes in the way in which they want to. It is not for everybody. Like you said, when is it different? Not everybody needs a trust. And it depends on how your assets are held as well. Because sometimes if you have a lot of assets that have beneficiary designations or passed by operation of law, such as if you own a house together as joint tenants, then a will may not even take effect. So there are obviously many circumstances where just having a will, and when I say just a will or just a trust, or really it's both, it's also inclusive of your other estate planning documents. And I want to mention that because when you put together an estate plan, it's really important that people also have powers of attorney. I think sometimes they're overlooked. People don't really think I need one, and they actually do. Especially if, God forbid, something happens, whether it's an accident and you're not prepared, then having a power of attorney allows other people to step in and continue to act for your best interest. And it's more possible that you might have a situation where you're dealing with somebody's in a hospital, somebody's out of the country, and somebody needs to act for you. And that's where powers of attorney step in. And then the last item, or the last document that I kind of put together in our plan, is what we call an advance directive, or maybe you've heard it called a living will. I like advance directive. So people think, oh, I have a will, and they think a living will is actually their will, and it's not. And what the living will or the advance directive is it's a directive when you are in a state of permanent unconsciousness or persistent vegetative state, end stage, terminal illness, and you can't speak and direct what your wishes are. That document will either, one, direct the healthcare providers what to do, but more importantly, it directs your family. And it also gives them the flexibility to act on your behalf when you can't.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan, for that breakdown. That was very helpful. So as somebody sets up a will or a trust, how often do you think that somebody should be revisiting and updating this information?
Revisiting and updating a will is actually most crucial when various stages in life or changes in life occur, whether it's a marriage, divorce, children, accidents, if there's some sort of health issue that comes up as you get older. Maybe there's a change in your financial circumstances. Maybe you're receiving an inheritance from a parent that changes your financial standpoint. And at that point, you should really evaluate to see, okay, does the plan that I have meet the goals that I need? Another important issue that comes up, and of course this comes in from my estate litigation background, is what if there's a change in just family circumstances? What if somebody's not talking to somebody? What if there's some sort of disagreements in the family? That comes up a lot, and you wouldn't want your plan to continue down a certain way if those decisions would be changed based upon that. So there are often times to do it, but it's not necessarily a yearly thing. But it is a good time to consider it every year. Just have it in the back of your mind, like, okay, am I up to date?
That's fair. Thank you for that. So what role does estate planning play in making things a little easier for loved ones?
Well, it gives you peace of mind, and it prevents what I call crisis planning or chaos planning, because the last thing you want to do when a crisis comes up is think straight. And that's the difficulty with not having your documents in place beforehand. It happens all too often that somebody might have some sort of medical emergency and they're in the hospital and there's no power of attorney. And that power of attorney would give them the right, somebody else, the ability to act for them. And without that, you now have to spend thousands of dollars to go through a guardianship. It's time consuming, it's expensive, and it's emotionally draining. And as far as your actual plan, same idea. It's a lot easier to have your wishes down for other people to know. I say that estate planning it's really comprised of three different issues. It's worrying about your tax consequences, it's worrying about the legal consequences, and then third, the personal consequences. What are your personal wishes? Are those being met? And I think that's the whole idea that people have to understand when they're putting together their estate plan, is that there's a great deal of flexibility as long as it meets with the legal and tax issues that surround that, so that people are able to pass their wealth, pass their assets, their legacy down to the rest of the family without too much, because it does happen, but without too much stress. And it makes things work smoothly. And everybody appreciates that.
Yeah, we definitely see it on our side. Definitely, some of these unfortunate events basically do add a lot of stress into some of these households and whatnot. I mean, to that point, like, how do you think about like young children? You know, parents that have young kids, and as they think about their estate planning, like, how do they secure more of their future, and how do you work with some of those types of situations?
Well, again, the idea is having the information available, that you're able to plan what will happen. When you have a will, you're able to name a guardian. If, God forbid, you and or your spouse, or depending on your marital situation, if somebody's not there, who's going to take care of your kids? It's really important to have that information down. It's also good for setting up a trust. If you have a trust that's going to direct when assets are distributed to children, because most people, especially people who have significant wealth, or really any wealth, you don't want your assets going to a child at 18 years of age. Before they go to school. Maybe it would disqualify them from getting financial aid. They can be subjects of designing parties. If they have a boyfriend when they're 19 years of age, or vice versa, a girlfriend, and somebody takes advantage of them and thinks there's money available. So the idea of having a trust is a great tool that says, okay, we're going to protect this. We're going to protect these monies for the child and also for others. So the idea of having all of these things, again, in place, is that it creates an easier path now versus later. Because later, you've got to pick up the pieces. Later, it's going to cost a lot of money to try and fix things that you didn't. And the consequences could be pretty big.
Interesting. No, thank you for that. Look, you've given us a lot to think about. What do you think our audience would benefit from in just sort of one simple step that they could pretty much take, right? Somebody who hasn't encountered estate planning, or maybe even somebody who has an estate plan right now, what's that really simple thing that they could basically do, as that, they could actually walk away from this video and say, I'm going to take action and do something. What do you think that they should go right ahead and go with to start out with?
Michael, I would love to say it's one step, but it's not. It's not. However, there are a couple of first steps here, plural, that people can take. Number one, call a reputable and experienced estate planning attorney. And if you can't, or you're not at that point yet, get a team together. Get the other people that are going to help you with your estate plan. I believe that working together with a full team, financial planners, accountants, life insurance agents, everyone together understands what your needs are. So it's getting a team together and thinking about what your ultimate goals are. I think what I have found when people come to me and they sit down in my office and they don't know where to go. They don't know what to ask. And I think the reason why I say talk to an estate planning attorney is because we see this. We know what questions to ask and what things that you need to consider. I can't tell you how many times people come in and say, "Oh, I didn't think about that." And that's what's important. Do you have people to be your executors? Do you have people to be your trustees? What does that look like? What happens if something happens to them? Do you have successors? So there's so many issues that you may not know, and it's good to rely upon the experts who do see it more often. Um, and most importantly, just follow through. I know it can be scary. Some people don't like to talk about their demise, but it's really important that you do take those first steps. And once you take that first step, you have people to help guide you so that you can complete them.
Perfect. That was a great summary. And look, Susan, we really appreciate the time that you took today. Hopefully, our audience really walked away with some more tidbits about estate planning and some actionable things that they can think about doing for themselves. Look, everyone, if NorthStar or Susan can basically help answer any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. Hope you guys have a great October, and see you guys soon.